about. As you know, it all begins with a question. Today, I have with me a very special guest who I discovered not too long ago from one of his pieces from the Times of Israel that he later republished for his own Substack. That piece is called Sorry, Mr. Chomsky, I No Longer Agree, My Journey Out of Anti-Zionism. So today we're going to discuss Kyle, this is his name. I'm going to give you more of an introduction, his experience in academia, why he was an anti-Zionist, what did that mean to him, and how did he begin his journey out of that? So a little bit about my guest before I formally welcome him. So Kyle Jones researches and writes on modern anti-Zionism history and the use of language. It's really important, working alongside the Jewish community to fight Jew hatred. And I think before I continue saying more about Kyle, I think these words working alongside the Jewish community is really important because Kyle is not Jewish, and that's something we're also going to talk about, and that he's an amazing ally for the Jewish people. And so I just wanted to stress that before we get into the conversation. So he holds 2 master's degrees in religious studies from Boston University. He's a longtime bridge builder. He has created interfaith programs and projects, including an initiative that he founded and edited at the Claremont Journal of Religion and at the Claremont Colleges. It's called Interview an Atheist at Church Day. I'd love to hear about that one too. His work has appeared in philosophy, religion, and society publications, including Philosophy Now, The Humanist, the Routledge Guide, and Free Inquiry. And really, I think for anybody who's watching and listening, a really great way to get to know Kyle's voice is on his Substack. It's called The Inverted World. You could find it at kylejones.substack.com. So, Kyle, with that, I'm so excited to welcome you to Don't Know Much About. Welcome, welcome.
Yep.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. That was an elaborate intro, and I'm super honored to be here.
Well, because you've done so much amazing work.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, truthfully, I do want to go back to how I found you. Is that I
hmm
think it was on Facebook, and somebody shared your article for the Times of Israel about. So sorry, Mr. Chomsky, I'm no longer an anti-Zionist. So I want to kind of go back to your what did you mean by that? I mean, I read the article. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pick out a few quotes, but tell us what was the main idea when you wrote that. What you want to say?
Sure. Well, I had been in academia for a long time. Graduate degrees from Boston University. I went to the Claremont Colleges, and I was a leftist. I still kind of am a little bit, but I'm not as extreme as I was. I'm more kind of liberal, but I was a leftist, and I one of my intellectual heroes was Noam Chomsky. I had read all of his stuff. I had listened to all of his lectures, all of this. He's a famous big name. Um, so I'm at Boston University, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to email this guy. I'm just going to email him and
Emailed him?
yeah, yeah. So this is a while ago. I was 24, 25. I was still in my heyday, with my little communist manifesto and thinking I'm going to change the world and all this. And so I emailed Chomsky, and he emailed back pretty shortly, and then I went and met him. And so I'm,
What
young.
did you say to him to get him to email you back?
I just told him, well, it was through his secretary, because he's so famous and everything. Um, and the secretary, I guess he sort of privileges students that want to meet him. I don't know if he knew I was not an MIT student. I have no idea. My email had BU on it. Who knows? But the secretary was like, yeah, he'd be willing to meet with you. So I just said that I was a student. I was a fan of his. I read all of his work. I'm working on how to relate religion to kind of leftist political ideologies, things like that.
Mm.
So I go and meet with him, and I'm at MIT, kind of like a starstruck kid, and I'm there, and there's like NBC reporters, there's CNN reporters, there's all these reporters with their cameras and everything sitting in the waiting area.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget it. This is the little anecdote. He comes out, and they're waiting. They're ready to run into his office, and he tells all the reporters to wait. He says, "Wait, no, 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 you guys are gonna have to wait," and they're kind of bothered. And he points to me and he's like, "Come on in." And so he let me sneak ahead of all these reporters, which I thought was really cool. You
I
know,
mean,
it was
to me, that seems like at least he's living truthfully to, let the little people in first.
yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. I'm like, yeah, you guys can manufacture consent later. Like I am dealing, excuse me, guys. Like my turn. So I go in. He's super friendly, super sweet, super, just talkative and very comfortable, very warm. Um, and we had this great conversation for like, I don't know, probably 30, 45 minutes, and it went by and like, felt like nothing. We talked about all kinds of different stuff, but basically I was just sort of at the zenith, at the heyday of my leftist intellectual uh, point in my life. And he just confirmed a lot of things for me that I was like, on the sort of on the right path, and I was doing the right things, and it was really encouraging. And that was it. And then, and then a lot of things changed in my life, and a lot of my views changed. But then next thing I know, I see a picture of him on a private jet, 10 years later with Epstein. And
Wow.
yeah, so that blew me away. I didn't know there was anything going on. I didn't know anything like that. And it was really disappointing. But I had since changed in the last year. I have changed my views on Israel.
Well,
And
before we go there, I just want to slow it down for a sec because it's very
sure.
important. I want to ask you what you meant by when you said I was a leftist. Like, what were your core beliefs? Like, what does that mean to you then? Not now, I guess, but because
Yeah. So then sorry.
no, go ahead, go
Then
ahead.
I was a communist.
Like full on,
Full on.
meaning like capital. You wanted to destroy capitalism, the free market.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you this question? I know this is totally off topic, but it's
No, no,
one thing
please.
that's so interesting to me because when I was in college, I met many the fellow peers who were also communists. And then when I returned back to college as a grad student, I would see them tabling with like Engels and Marx literature and the Communist
Yeah.
Manifesto and all that. And I would always ask them, because I'm from the former Soviet Union, so I grew up completely inoculated against this because my family came from a communist country. So I would always ask, and I'm curious to get your answer. I would always come up to these students and say, okay, but everywhere that it's been tried, everywhere that this idea has been operationalized, it's been not just failure, it's been like massacres of people have to be killed. Oh, they
Yeah.
didn't get it right, and they did. I'm like, okay, one time you don't get it right, two times you don't get it right. You know that like, but we're like talking Venezuela, China, Cuba, North Korea, Soviet Union, the Soviet bloc countries. Like, did anybody ask you, like, when you believed in these ideas, did you think like, oh, they just didn't get them right? I'm just curious.
No, no, that's a great question because it actually is a difficult thing for people to answer, right? Because it's not whenever it's incarnated, it's horribly brutal. So when I got asked that question back then, I would say that yeah, you have to do what's called the no true Scotsman fallacy, which is that well, it's not that's not actual, or it wasn't implemented correctly, right? So the
Right.
idea has to remain pure, right? The philosophy, the idea is pure, but the incarnate, the iteration of it was done incorrectly through men, through whether you're talking about Stalin or Lenin or Pol Pot or Mao, that they did it wrong, right? But it begs the question. It's it's a logical fallacy.
Right.
So
Well, this is what I mean. We're not here to talk about communism, although it's a big interest of mine and why
sure.
people continuously fall for it. I think because it offers I always tell my students anything that offers a utopia, be very suspect of it.
Yep.
I think that the reason I've been thinking about it for many years, like why has does communism not work? because it negates human nature. And we're driven by ego. We're not, at our core, we don't really want, I think, we don't really want no competition. We don't want to destroy the individual. We want recognition. We want to get an award. People are driven by incentives. And when you
Sure.
destroy incentives, and that's kind of what communism is, people just don't behave like they won't behave in the way that a ideal communist society states it will. So I think that to me, I mean,
Yeah.
I may be continue. I obviously will be thinking about this for many years, but at this point, I think that one of the reasons it does fail is because it's a utopia that no human being can live up to because we are flawed creatures.
Yeah, it's that's what's so problematic about it is that it's a very attractive ideology because the ideas are pure. And to be honest, in a world in which we didn't live competitively or didn't have personal stakes and investments and affirming ourselves and bettering our future and egoism, uh it's a great idea. Like it's a great idea in a kind of utopic heavenly sense, but in reality when it's instantiated it's awful. It's brutal and I agree. I think that it's good to do things with your own self-interest in mind because you can better yourself and you're in a place to better other people.
Right.
But I was a new grad student. I was thinking of it philosophically, and I wasn't really thinking about it pragmatically,
Mm.
which is a problem. That's a
No.
problem.
And I know that's why, it really speaks to a young mind, I think, very well. But when you have
Yes.
somebody who's older, like Chomsky, who still believes in this stuff, but yet, goes on a private jet, that's kind of where I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yep.
But that's,
Yeah.
but Kyle, just so you know, all the top Soviet leaders had the most cushiony life.
Oh yeah, they
They-
did.
yeah, they did not live like equals. Anyway,
No.
so may I ask you, when you met with Chomsky, did Israel come up in that conversation at all?
Yeah. Yeah. Israel came up.
So when you had this worldview that you would call leftist,
Yep.
where it was more of a mm, proclivity towards communism, how much was Israel part of that worldview in your mind?
For me, it was a little part of it. It wasn't huge. I had Jewish friends. I went to BU. Boston University has the most Jewish students out of any school in the US,
Oh
I
wow, I
believe.
didn't know that. Wow.
Mhm. And so this is what was so jarring for me too, having now changed my views on Israel, is that I learned a lot of my anti-Zionism from Jews, like my Jewish professors. Yeah. So you get you want to talk about like a jarring perspective. Because they were,
I'm not surprised.
they were socialists, they were anti-Zionist Jews that were, they were academic, they were professors, they're into the ideology, into the right, like talking about like Bund, like the bone, like the bun, but like they so I didn't really see it as an antipathy or an opposition to Jewish people. I saw it as still somehow fitting, which I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's not. I think that communism and leftist ideas have done nothing but harm Jews. Um,
One, yes, and everybody else beyond Jews. Yes.
yeah, and I feel like that's a factual claim. You can't really dispute that historically. So it wasn't a huge part of my leftism. Let's put it that way. Uh, but since I've started changing my views over the last year regarding Israel, it's been paramount. It's been a main issue in my life right now is Israel. And I
Okay.
think in the world, if we look around in the world right now, it's everyone seems to be obsessed with it. I think October 7th and things like that occurred. But I did talk to Chomsky about it. Chomsky has his normal pitches. I think uh he had so much in his mind just memorized. I don't know if he was quoting like just a memory or a rote response to Israel, but he says a lot of the same stuff,
Right. It's
and
become recycled already.
yeah,
Right.
it's recycled. So he had kind of a recycled thing. It's the usual thing that the state of Israel is a settler colonial. implementation. It's a satellite state for the West. It's an imperial state. It's you name it. The whole leftist explanation for the state of Israel.
Hmm. Well, before we go into your moment that you switched, I still think there's some um, kind of important stuff to drill down into.
Sure.
Would you agree with me that being a leftist, and we define this as somebody who's more, I'm going to define it this way, uh, pro-communist in terms of economics,
Mhm.
but also anti-oppression. People who are
Yes.
leftist tend to be buy into anti-oppressive ideology and view the world through this oppressive lens of who has power and who doesn't have power.
Yes.
So that's how I define broadly leftism, very broadly. Would you agree with me that people who have this leftist worldview are anti-Zionist? They're bedfellows.
I would say so. Yeah, I would definitely say so because they associate Zionism. Once again, we have to start defining Zionism because for them, Zionism is this amorphous, metaphysical entity that's like everything that's bad is Zionism. It's not the Jewish people's historic expression of self-determination. It's not that. It's somehow it becomes this evil, monstrous entity. You know
Right.
what I mean?
I,
So they start
I
saying capitalism is like Zionism, or Zionism is racism, right? Like the UN, declaration in 1979.
yeah, I'm just
Um,
pulling up something. I think somebody quoted you, and I just want to quote it because I think it's so it dovetails to what you're saying. You
sure.
said either you wrote somewhere. Yes, it's in your Substack. It's from that article. By anti-Zionism, I mean something deeper and more sweeping, the belief that Jewish collective life itself is evil, uniquely suspicious, or defective in a way others aren't. I deliberately dropped the hyphen in anti-Zionism for this reason. Was
Y-
your explanation. But
Yep.
I think you just like hit the nail on the head when you said like for the anti-Zionists, they create this boogeyman out of Zionism, this cosmic villain. But
Yes.
really, at its core, it's viewing the Jewish collective life as evil and uniquely suspicious. And I think that's really core. I like you really understood it in ways that so many, I'm sorry, Kyle, I'm gonna say it on the record, so many Jews don't understand it. That's the one thing I wanted to touch upon, which is this leftist. It's an incredible hypocrisy in many ways. Like you would think, okay, if you're anti-oppression, if you're for decolonization, how could you not see the Jewish case as the prime example, as like the
Yeah.
apotheosis of that? Fine,
Mhm.
whatever. But that to me, that means that there must be a different value in leftism. But okay, the other thing that you said, which I really want to highlight and stress, is you said that when you were at BU, you learned your anti-Zionism from Jewish faculty and peers. And I think that I think this is a very important moment for my listeners to hear because this actually tracks with so much of what I experienced in academia. The biggest fights that I had, Kyle, were not with the anti-Zionist non-Jews or the bystanders or the Islamists. Those were
Yeah.
not big. The biggest problem were the Jews. The Jews, two types: the ones who were actually anti-Zionist, and the other ones who were afraid to call out anti-Zionism.
Sure.
And look, I'm interviewing you, so it's about you. But I'll just share. When I was in a grad school at UCLA, the at the time he was the director of Jewish studies, recused himself from my dissertation committee because of my Zionism. He's, so
Oh my gosh.
oh yeah,
Really?
I lost some funding as a
Wow.
grad student. This is, I guess, it's a story waiting to be told one day about the role that, and I hate this
He,
because
he
I'm
he felt a conflict of conscience.
conflict of conscience. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, he
geez.
called me into his office and rebuked me and told me that if I ever want to be taken seriously as a scholar, I should drop all my Zionist activism. Meanwhile, mind you,
Wow.
he became involved. I'm not sure in what capacity, but a pretty strong, a pretty central capacity with the New Israel Fund, which is a huge advocacy activism org against Israel. Okay,
Yeah.
So I just want to stress, because I think that I wanted to dig into your a little bit about your past and your undergrad and your kind of love affair with leftism and communism. And you were also, again, I guess you also bought into this anti-oppressive worldview that the world,
Yes.
yes. Um, and that you learned, and I wanted to stress that for my listeners and viewers, that you learned a lot of this from Jews, which is
Mhm.
me so much. So now let's go to the unlearning part.
Okay.
What happened? Like what's tell me about that.
Yeah, so that I feel real quick, that's really unfortunate too, because that's so as like a it was your advisor, real quick, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah.
Was he
Yeah.
your direct advisor?
No, no, he was not my main advisor.
He
He
was
like
one of
it
the
was
people.
he was on the committee, but he wasn't like a core.
Got it. He was one of the people you brought on the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But that's unfortunate. So I yeah, so I learned a lot of the anti-Zionism from Jews. And what changed was I think so I have a really good friend who's Ashkenazi, is a Jewish man, and I saw the way he was treated after the Sabbath. People started disowning him, people started distancing themselves from him, people
When you
started
say
act
people, hold on, let's talk about when you say people, like at work, in his,
in real life.
but in what way? Like, can you give us some examples?
Well, they wouldn't, I mean, passive comments, passive aggressive statements, asking him to what his stance on Israel is, expecting him to denounce Israel. Basically, it's a litmus test that Gentiles use to say whether to see whether you're a good Jew or not. Right? It okay. So tell me you disagree with the genocide or the apartheid state or that Zionism is evil or something. Like, say something that affirms what I'm saying, otherwise you're a suspect. So this happened to him, and it happened to him in real life, and I saw it. He got othered. He got marked as being and he wouldn't denounce. And this, and I'm going to say this real quick. He wasn't a huge Zionist. He didn't wear it on his sleeve. He was just a regular Jewish person that, like most Jews, like over 80-90% of Jews, believe that the state of Israel should exist. So he was just a regular, average Jewish person. But when confronted or kind of like put through this test, he refused. He would not. And that's one of the reasons I respect him is he didn't put into the social pressure, he didn't buy into it, and he said no, like, I believe Israel should exist. Like, what are you talking about? So a bunch of, and these are woke people, these are leftists, not leftists, like, these are liberal, pluralistic, anti-oppressive, like you said, types of people, and they abandoned him and treated him like a leper. And I saw this happen, and it was really frustrating and extremely damaging and harming. So I didn't want to be
But
that. Go
but
ahead.
may I ask you something? May I push back? I'm just trying to
Sure.
get into your mind. But if you are at this point, I don't know at this point in your life if you how committed you are to this anti-oppressive.
Yeah.
How come you're like, dude, why don't you say to your friend, look, I respect you as a Jew, but like, yeah, I think it's really like you should stand against this oppression that's happening to the Palestinian Arabs. Like, how come
I,
you did what was it about you that you saw this and you're like, wait, this is othering, this is stigmatizing, this is
yeah.
purging? How did you see that? If you still believed in a leftist, I don't know what where you were in your
I
trajectory.
I had gone from communism to, I call it like the exit strategy. Is you I had gone to socialism. So I got to communism light.
Yes,
You
yes.
can't, you got to wean yourself off. You can't, you got to take like instead of heroin, you got to take methadone. So I, I was on socialism, which is methadone. And then got off of socialism, and I was just a liberal. I was a liberal, and I still am type of person. But yeah, it didn't make sense to me because because they weren't viewing him as a minority. They were viewing him, once again, they're viewing Jews as white people. and they're not white people. So I,
But it begs the question, and I understand what you're saying, but to me, I don't want to be respected or protected just because I'm a minority. For
sure,
instance, it's
sure.
not okay to demonize white people also.
I agree. I'm just saying that in the sense of you, it's in the sense of their worldview that
That's how they
minority,
explained it.
that's how they think is they think in terms of like the marginalized, the other, the minority. And I'm not saying we should think that way. I'm just saying they do, and you would think that they would go, oh, okay, this is a Jewish person. There are, 15 million of them. You want to talk about a minority? That's the extreme minority. And not just that, but their history is riddled with genocides and pogroms and you name it, right? From Croatia to Serbia to, Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And they didn't think that way. Somehow, when the seventh hit, it was denounce Israel or you're not a good Jew, and we're going to treat you that way. And he was. And he stood his ground, and I'm still good friends with him to this day. And I had a good relationship with him. He was a man that I knew I could respect and trust. And so I saw him go through this, and it threw kinks into my perspective, and I started to sort of rethink. Also, the seventh, October 7th was. I hate that it took such an unfortunate tragedy to kind of galvanize or shock me out of my perspective and make me reconsider, but it did. It absolutely did. So I started studying after the seventh. I started studying the origins of Israel, the everything. I deep dove,
I know, but it's so
and
interesting because so many people didn't. So many of your like-minded
how can you
peers,
not?
because to them they saw this as a moment of the oppressed people finally
Ugh,
rose up and
it's horrible. I remember somebody saying when they saw the fence get teared down, it was like a liberation from a open air prison. And for me, I had just studied about like the sexual offenses, and because they're like Pillai's study in the UN came out, and it was weird because all the women at the UN were silent. They didn't they didn't say anything, and they're the sexual crimes unit is meant specifically for that, and they didn't say anything. So it was weird, and then I started studying what was happening and what occurred on the ground, like the gory, horrible details. And so, no, to me, it was an abomination that people weren't saying anything. That I really finally got to see anti-Semitism as like a stark black and white look. Like this is anti-Semitic.
Mhm. So you saw, and I think that what makes you unique, I guess, is that you probably have the tendency to not just believe everything you see. You want to read. You have I'm getting that sense that you
Yes.
wanted to study. So you went and studied about who are these Jewish people and what is their origin. So before that, I'm just so curious, did you think that the Jews were like some European transplant that decided to just come to Israel? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, so I wasn't a complete novice. I mean, I understood the history of the Israelites and the Hebrews and the kingdom of Judea. And, I'm a religious studies person. So, of course, I know the Tanakh and the Talmud and the history of Jewish people. Like, I understand, but we make a distinction between, say, like, after the Second Temple's destroyed and the diaspora happens under Rome. We make a distinction between those Jews and then the founding of the nation state of Israel, right?
Who is we? Who is we when you say we make a distinction?
Scholars, or Gentiles, maybe, or anti-Zionists. I'd probably say anti-Zionists make a distinction between the diaspora and the founding of the nation state.
So you're telling me that the anti-Zionists, who are, let me, like the more academic type,
Sure.
know that that there was a Judean kingdom, that
Yeah,
there were an ancient Israelites, that they are,
that's not disputed. Those are historical facts that anti-Zionists will not disagree with. I mean,
what they say in your experience is that there's a distinction between those Jews. And you know what's interesting about this? Can I just pause for a
sure,
second?
sure.
You know what's fascinating about that is that In my study of Jew hatred, which I've defined as three eras, anti-Judaism, okay, so in when you go deeper into the era of Christian-dominated Jew hatred, which was anti-Judaism, people like
Mhm.
Saint Augustine and Martin Luther would often say that there's a distinction between those Jews of the Old Testament and these Jews living among us.
Yep,
That's just
they
so
sure
fascinating.
would.
They and those Jews were the good Jews, and these
Mhm.
living among us are the pernicious ones who did not see the light. Um,
Yeah, it almost makes a distinction between, I mean, you can get even deeper and do the Sephardic Ashkenazi thing, or the fact that Ashkenazi get fetishized as like the white European normative Jew, or the bad Jew, right? Like you can, there's all different ways to go with that, but you're absolutely right. Like notorious anti-Semites, like from Martin Luther, all the way back to Augustine, did that. Yeah. So we didn't see it that way though. It's a different dichotomy because the difference is that the dichotomy starts with the founding of the nation state.
right. I understand that for and people who hold on to anti-oppressive ideology, the very idea notion of a nation state is abhorrent, right?
Yeah,
Because they
except for
brought
the
us
one that's protected us, right?
right, exactly. But also I'm sorry, but there's like 70 plus or 100 plus nation states around the world. I don't see,
Yes.
that's my see, I know when I'm dealing with a Jew hater when it's obsessively about one topic. Like we don't see anything else, we just see the problem.
It was, I want to iterate that, like, for me, it didn't become like such a huge thing until I think after the seventh. I wasn't going around with placards saying Zionism is racism or Israel is evil. That wasn't my main focus. My main focus was just leftism in general, and it so happened that it had these views about Israel. But my big thing wasn't Israel, but a lot of people's were.
Hmm.
I'll say that. I'd say Zionism is a huge pejorative, right? You say someone's Zionist, it's a negative thing.
So fascinating because within the Jewish world, it's a beautiful world, a word.
Yeah.
Not for all Jews, but for most Jews, it's like many Jewish day schools say we're proudly Zionist because what that just means is that we're just strong Jews. We're just Jews who know who we are. That really is what it's a Jewish identity. It's nothing to do with the government. It is
Yeah.
nothing. It's just like, hey, we love our country, we love our land, and that's what it means to us.
Which is so, it's crazy to take that term. I mean, in Russia was genius for this. They were genius for taking that term, having it be a code proxy for Jew, and
Yes,
then flipping it into a nefarious thing. That it's genius propaganda.
absolutely.
And and it worked. It absolutely worked. But you look around today, what are they saying? They're saying the same things that came out of Soviet bloc stuff, right? So but I agree with you. I view it differently now. I think Zionism is fantastic. I think if you want to talk about decolonization, Zionism is a people's first like indigenous movement.
Right. I don't dispute that at all. But here's the thing that I want to get your take on, just because I'm very aware that you are not Jewish and I am. So I'm always,
Yes.
I want to get your take. So we in the Jewish world are, we're in crisis amongst ourselves in terms of how we advocate. So, and I wrote about this a few months ago. I said that we've been doing what I called inward advocacy versus outward. And what I meant by that is we believed that people suffer from a lack of facts and knowledge and narrative. So it's a misinformation problem. So we're going to educate them about Zionism and Israel. And
Mhm.
we're going to tell them, we're going to take them through the tour of Jewish history, basically. We're going to talk about how Jews are not white, how we're indigenous, how Zionism is this prime example of decolonization. And I have to tell you, it doesn't really work now. It doesn't work
Yeah.
now. And I'll and so lately, in the last, I would say 2 years, I've shifted my focus to say, no, we don't need more education on Zionism. Maybe we do internally for the Jews, but for the outside world, we actually need to educate on anti Zionism. And I'll give you a prime example. I do a lot of training with Stop Anti-Zionism, the organization I co-founded. And recently I did a training for psychiatrists, and it was on the history of anti-Zionism.
Oh, you need that for the APA right now.
Yes, yes. And there was a terrible anti-Zionist on the call, and he just was like, you cannot give this talk, he said, unless you first define Zionism. I will not listen. He kept on interrupting. You need to define Zionism. And you said it earlier today on this like recording. You said they've created this villain out of Zionism. That's the whole thing. Like, there's no point of defining it because they've already relegated it. They've already basically defined it to be this terrible thing. But why should we all be surprised? That is how the Jew hater works. In all three eras, they fashioned this monster out of the Jew, right?
Yep.
In order to sanction all this terrible purging and violence against them. So my question to you, this is a long intro, but my question to you is, what are your thoughts about the Jewish community? How, like from aside, what you see, their struggles. Some of them want to lead with, we need more education on Zionism. We need to tell the non-Jewish world more about Israel versus we need more education on anti-Zionism. And the second question is, do you agree with me that it's not helpful to define Zionism?
That's a really good question. So first, I would say a caveat to all of this is that people are not reasonable. Like generally speaking, people act on their emotions. They they don't reason in rational vacuums. They reason amongst relationships, amongst their social environment. They navigate the world through things outside of logic and reason and beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a strategic point because I think what would help Gentiles or anti-Zionists is relationships.
What do
If
you
you
mean
haven't
by
no
that?
if you haven't noticed, like a ton of of course you have, but like in general, a ton of relationships got severed. How many Jews have you met that have been like, man, I miss my Gentile friends. Like I miss like or go like they treated us horribly,
Yes.
right? And they did. Like we failed on the seventh, big time. So I'll put that caveat out that people sometimes it takes a relationship and not an argument. Sometimes that's how people change. So I'll just that caveat. Now, with that included, I do think it's important. I don't think it's either or, but educating someone on Zionism that's an anti-Zionist, I'm not so sure that's the best strategy. I think it's probably better to make them see what anti-Zionism is actually. Um, that's my take now. I think that's a better approach because if you put a mirror or a spotlight on what anti-Zionism is, it's a lot harder to deny. You have less room to wiggle out and go, well, no, there's this historical accident, or this happened in 1949, or this Arab country, like, or Israel did this in this battle in 1960, like in the Six-Day War, or you're gonna get into a lot of weeds and historical stuff that, and also they could just go, okay, you think that's Zionism? I don't think that's what Zionism is. I think it's this ideology of Jewish superiority,
That's
all
exactly
the
what he said to me. This guy, this psychiatrist, he wrote to me, what is Zionism? What type of Zionist are you? Again, this like litmus test. What kind of Jew are you? Sorry, I said,
yes.
well, you would ever ask a woman, what kind of feminist are you? First wave, second wave, third wave? Like, what is this
it
nonsense?
it's crazy how they don't realize how offensive it is to even ask that because it is it's trying to now I think because this is what I do, right? So now what I do, what I do. What I do is I focus on defining anti-Zionism. Like
Yeah.
that's all I've done is with the language, right? Like with the culture, with the symbols, with everything that makes up or constitutes a movement or a social group. That's what I focus on, and so that we can easily identify. A lot of people don't understand what modern anti-Zionism is. They don't
Yes, you've been
know.
doing a lot of work with that. So yeah, that maybe this is a good time. What you mean by language? You've been like, talk to me. I know you've created a taxonomy, a dictionary.
Yeah.
That's very important. So why don't
So
we talk about that a bit?
sure. So I've been focusing on what I call the anti-Zionist glossary or lexicon. So it's the terms that people use, right? So Zionist is a big one. Like, what is a Zionist? If you ask 90%, the majority of all Jews are just going to say it's just the Jewish people. It's their expression of self-determination, or it's just, or and they don't have a huge debate amongst themselves about what a Zionist is. The only people that do are anti-Zionist Jews, and they're like 7% or less. They're a
Correct.
tiny, we got to emphasize this. The Jewish Voice for Peace, those types of people, they do not represent Jews.
Right.
They're not the Mamdani types. Those do not represent Jews. Like
Correct.
those are a 7% or less, 7% at most. Like we're looking at maybe 5% or less. So they're tokenizing a small amount of Jews and going, that's what Jews are. No, they're not. The majority of all Jews are not that. They're actually the antipathy of that.
Correct.
So I just want to say that real quick, but yeah. So the language, Zionist, things like okay, so phrases that people use like globalize the intifada, from the river to the sea. Those are pretty clear and explicitly uh, genocidal terms, but
They're clear to
besides,
you. They're clear to you, but you know what? I work in Jewish education.
yeah,
Jewish educators are unclear with that. Well, it depends. They're like, it depends on the context. It
no,
depends. Yeah, yeah,
it's like
yeah.
saying globalize the Shoah. Like, what do you mean? Like, no, it's the Intifada. It's a historical iteration of terrorism. Like, so no, I disagree with that. It's not vague at all. It's very clear. And from the river to the sea is a river and a sea. We can physically go to the river and we can physically go to the sea, and we know what's between it.
Yes, but they say when Palestine will be free, they're like, oh, it means free for everyone. There's freedom for all, equality for everyone.
Which is what we call semantic drift, which is basically taking a term and changing its meaning. So that's not what the people who created it meant. The
Right. Because
people
in
who
Arabic,
created it meant it as destruction of all Jews from the Levant.
I know in Arabic, it's I had a guy on Michael. He's amazing on my show of about a few months ago, who was an anti-Zionist himself. In Arabic, it's from the river to the sea. Palestine will be Jew free. That's actually what it means. They
It's
took it.
in the Arabic, it's Palestine will be Arab,
Right. Excuse me. Palestine will
which
be
is the same,
Arab.
which is the same thing.
Which is yes. Sorry, you're right. Yes.
No, no worries.
Um.
Yeah, it'll say like from the river to the sea or from the water to the water. Palestine will
Yeah.
be
From the water to the.
Palestine will be Arab. Or another early one is Palestine will be Muslim. So it's basically yes, it's saying that no Jews should be between those bodies of water. So, but besides that, all these other terms, let's think like even just things uh like that Israel is settler colonial. So
Mhm.
settler colonialism, right? A colonizer, genocider, apartheid, the
Mhm.
libels, right? The main
Yes.
three libels, which are colonizer, genocide, and apartheid, those are used all the time in discourse right now. Right? Whenever you hear, I'm so sick of hearing the term colonial or colonizer because you hear it so much now. Whenever Israel's brought up, it's the second most used word. And
Mhm.
that is an anti-Zionist word,
Mhm.
right? And so if we better understand the language that's used, we can better understand what anti-Zionism is. So that's what I'm doing.
Understood. Yeah, that's very important. Like, look, I have to tell you, because I've been again, I'm ensconced in the Jewish educational world, and to get Jewish educators to see that Free Palestine is a dog whistle, is basically a whistle for killing Jews.
It is.
It's very hard. It's very, very hard. I will never forget. Remember last May, Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky were murdered outside of Washington. Okay, the guy
Yeah.
who shot them screamed "Free, free Palestine" before he did that. And when I told that to my students, they were like, "Well, it doesn't just because he yelled it once doesn't mean that the phrase itself means that."
He says free twice.
what they meant in that one instance,
No, no,
because
no. I know, but I'm saying that you say
oh,
free
he's
twice in a protest.
oh, okay, got it.
So it's hearkening to the protest.
Right, exact. Of course.
Yeah.
There, that's a really good point. Um, and I said, well, guys, the phrase Heil Hitler by itself just means salute Hitler.
That's good. That's good.
That's all it means, really.
It's
But
true, literally.
it's salute. But that somebody who says, this is the on the history of euphemisms final solution. It wasn't kill Jews. People, bad faith actors don't speak transparently often. They speak in coded ways. They use
Yes.
euphemisms for really terrible things, like
Yeah.
from the river to the sea is the final solution
Why
for
why didn't Mom Donnie condemn globalizing Intifada?
because he supports that. Right.
Exactly. Because he's gonna look bad to his people if he denounces it. And so what happened and you vagueness is the enemy in this discussion. When you start asking them, what does globalize into the Intifada mean peace to the world? Like, okay, just say peace to the world then.
Yeah, just say peace.
Because
Exactly.
just say peace to the world. Why are you saying globalize the Intifada? Like, you know what the Intifada, like, just Google Intifada and then
Mhm.
get back to me. So,
And so
yeah,
let me ask you this now. Have you talked to people who are, I don't know, anti-Zionist?
yes.
And okay, I'd love to hear how those conversations go and how you try to educate them.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a difference, I think, between online and in real life, but in real life, I'm actually a lot nicer and cordial than I am
We all are.
online.
We all are. Yes.
Yeah, I think that we're all a little more brutal online, but I I'll just tell them, and I've had it so many times because I'm at work and somebody will say something at work, which is wildly like unprofessional, to say something like, free Palestine at like amongst your coworkers. Um, and it's all over the place. That's the one thing about anti-Zionism too, is it's like it creeps into the socially accepted places like City Hall, work. I mean, Jewish employees have to deal with this all the time.
Oh, yes.
Uh, and so they'll bring it into work. I'll take them aside, or I'll just try to talk to them, and I'll say, do you know like the history of what that phrase means? And I have a bunch of examples I can give, where it's used and it's used correctly. And the correct way to use it is anti-Zionist. It's basically saying you don't want Jews, you want Jews gone. That's the one thing about anti-Zionism is it doesn't like Jews. They just need to realize that what they're parroting, what they're chanting, what they're regurgitating, sometimes they're not exactly sure what it is. And that's a problem, right? This Soviet propaganda, you got people spouting Soviet propaganda and not even knowing it. So I'll
So,
take them
so,
aside.
so walk
I'll
me
take them
through.
aside
So
and
you,
educate
you
them.
take them aside and you do some educating. And how do they respond to your efforts? I'm just
They'll
curious.
either they'll either push back. A lot of our communication methods don't have to do with what we say, but how we say it, which I think is a key that people need to understand in terms of pedagogy. In terms of so when somebody's guard is up and they're defensive, their reason is not activated. Their emotions are triggered. It's a volatile subject. It's emotion laden. It's so people get defensive and then they harden their cognitive bias even more.
Okay.
So it's hard to break through that strategically, like in terms of pedagogy. So I try to relate it to actual Jews or actual human beings. Like, so if my friend Joel, his father died in like the first Intifada, there was this suicide bomber that, blew up this bus and his leg got blown off and he was in the hospital and he died from it. He, you know, and it was during the first Intifada in the 90s. And uh, if he heard that, if my friend Joel heard that, he would think the Intifada, like his father's leg, his death, the bus being blown up, the children screaming, all this, like in Tel Aviv, right? So, what would you think about being him hearing it or something like that? Because what you do is you take it out of the realm of ideas and you put it into people. So I would ask him, what would he say to my friend Joel about, would he say globalized intifada to him? Like,
And you've done this, you've had this kind of, and I'm
yeah,
so curious. And then
of
what happened?
course.
And then what happened?
Well, then they have a choice either to harden their bias even more and double down, which they do. I'm not saying I'm not 100% successful here. But they do. They'll double down and say, well, it may offend Joel about this, but so what? There's a bigger geopolitical thing here that we're doing. You know, you got to crack a couple eggs to make an omelet. And then he basically has to admit that he's a a-hole and doesn't care what this person thinks, which I just want them to be able to see that, first of all. Then they'll double down, and then at that point there's not much you can do, really. I mean, at that point the cognitive bias is so sealed and hardened that if you're willing to tell someone whose parent died in the intifada, globalizing the intifada, what else are you going to do for this person? You're not. At that point, I just I'll let them go. Or if they go, oh, you know what, I wouldn't say that to someone whose parent died in the intifada. Then you start going, well, yeah, I mean, because it's insensitive, you know, and or not even that. You make it not a personal attack. You make it about caring for other people.
Hmm.
Like if your Jewish coworkers hear it, you make it like, I care about this person. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
That's how you do it.
Interesting.
Because they're less likely to want to tell a Jewish person who's experienced it than to disagree with an idea.
Right. So you move from logos to pathos, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's very, very effective. You know, as you were speaking, I have to tell you that I started to look at myself right now. At a lot of my trainings, I do get anti-Zionists, and they do start to push back, and they do it from logos, and I dig my heels even more, and I get even more frustrated, and I get even more aggressive. So
I
just
don't blame you.
right, but you see, had they probably started with a more emotional, subdued way of talking to me, maybe I my guard would go down a bit too. So I'm just reflecting that I too do this. I'm even
Yeah.
though I know that I am on the right side of history and what anti-Zionism is, I think that what you are saying is there's interpersonal relations that are very, very key to
Yes.
in-person dialogue or in-person training or however you want to call it. I think that's really key. I think
Yeah.
I've seen also training go really bad. I've seen training go really well, and I noticed that the ones that go more well or do a better job, they're less invested emotionally, and they just kind of like talk in a more calm way about the situation.
Yeah.
Um,
It's hard. That's a really
and it's hard,
difficult.
but to your
Yeah.
point, there was a training once, and somebody asked, they weren't getting what anti-Zionism was. They were just like not. And the trainer was like, look, imagine a classroom and there's an Israeli student and everybody boycotts that Israeli student and says, we're not sitting next to a colonizer. Like, how would you agree with that? And they were like, yeah, of course we agree with that. Because for them, it's like, why would I sit next to a Nazi? Like, for them, the Israeli is
It's
the Nazi. So they, instead of like, this is like the strategy of, can you see the human? We see the human in each other? And some people they can't. They just
and
cannot.
I'm sorry if I get passionate about it too, and it that is so okay. So that example is good though, right? That's exactly what I would do. Something I would do. And if they double down and say they would not sit next to an Israeli, if they're willing to say that, then the job is done.
You think so?
Like, what else are you going to tell a person? You've revealed their bigotry. They admit it.
But what if the bigotry is justified? Like I don't want to sit next to a Nazi either, like a real
It's
Nazi.
Oh, for sure, I don't either, and I have been forced to. Th- well, I mean, obviously, besides educating the difference between an Israeli and a Nazi, which shouldn't have to take any education at all. And to be honest with you, I bet you if there was an Israeli in the room, they wouldn't.
I guess what I'm trying, yeah, I understand, but I guess what I'm trying to say is,
I'm
I may get in
they
trouble for
it,
this.
mirror back to them what they're saying. What they're saying is that if my friend Joel here, this guy who's awesome, I love this guy. Like, give him a hug. Like, you wouldn't sit next to my friend because he's from Israel. I guarantee you that room would switch.
Interesting. Okay, well, we could like it's a great, you know,
Or if not, or if they don't switch, then fine. Okay, let's imagine they don't switch. They're ready to other this person who's flesh and blood. As long as they can see that, as long as they can see what they're
I
doing.
know. I guess my point, Kyle, is I want to like we all talk about how hate is bad, but I'm like, what is hate really? And are there certain things that are justifiably good to hate? Like, is all
Yes.
hate really bad?
No.
I hate communism. I hate like when the Soviet Union collapsed, we were already in the United States of America, my family, but my parents were very happy because they thought that the Soviet Union was an evil empire. So they were very happy to see it fall apart. Um, there are certain things that I hate and I think that they're justifiable. That's the kind of that where I'm getting at, which is um that's why it's such a difficult hatred to confront because I always call it a virtuous hatred because people who buy into these demonizing narratives believe that they are righteous and that they are rescuing this world. So I guess my
Yeah.
question, and we can like is in that room if you're like, hey, this is my friend Joel, he's an Israeli. You don't want to sit with him just because he's an Israeli? And then everyone says, yeah, we don't. And you're like, okay, well, I just want you to sit with the fact that you just othered someone
Yeah.
because they're an Israeli.
Yep. If at that point they're willing to look at it at the human and other them, I don't really at that point there's not much else to do. I'm not going to convince a person to be human or to have the training is over.
Training.
At this point, the training is over, and I'm going to say that you're full of hate, and you're basically you're a hate group right now.
Okay.
Sometimes,
I
look,
guess I
there's a time. Sometimes anger is a gift. Like I'm not saying everybody needs to be, emotionally vulnerable and all this. There are times to call a spade, and that's a time to call anti-Zionism, and what it is Jew hatred. You just hated on my Israeli Jewish friend for being an Israeli Jew.
yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, at that point, what are you going to say? You're just going to say the truth.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. I just am thinking just a little out of the box. This is a crazy example, but imagine I
No.
was in a training about not to hate. I know this is gonna sound really bad. Like you can't just hate Nazis, like just because, and there's this Nazi German in the room, and just because he's, this little bit, kind of a crazy example out of
I
the
understand. I
my
understand.
point is I guess what I'm struggling with is that there are certain things that are justifiably good to hate. Just
And
hate
it,
and
sorry.
it's not bad.
I no, and I agree with that. All I would say is, as you clearly know, there's a big difference between a Nazi and an
Yes.
Israeli.
Yes, yes, yes. So, okay, so as we are wrapping up, what are you working on that you want to share with us? What are your plans? Because you really generate so much content. I really want everyone to follow you on Substack.
Yeah.
Once again, it's called The Inverted Universe or The Inverted World. The Inverted
The
World.
third world.
The Inverted World. Tell us about the title of The Inverted World.
Yeah, my world got totally flipped upside down after the seventh.
Nice.
So
So that's what
that's
it
what it
is.
is.
Trying to got
Yeah.
it.
The
Okay.
world, and I don't know about you, but the world it seems to this day still a bit upside down. Like
Totally, entirely. Yes.
Absolutely. Like you have the New York Times publishing stuff about dog rape, trading dogs to rape. I mean, what are we talking about here? And you guys were awesome there. I love seeing you guys there outside the New York Times protesting. That's fantastic. But for me, it's about it's about identifying and understanding anti-Zionist language, verbiage, what they say, how they say it, what they say means, because it's easier to identify and call it what it is, which is hate. It's Jew hatred, and um, I'll work on my anti-Zionist Gentiles, and you can work on your anti-Zionist Jews.
Interesting. So are you telling me, sorry, that most of the people that you are in communication with are mostly the non-Jews?
No, I mean, no, there isn't. I don't really choose any. I'm just saying I try not to speak to anti-Zionist Jews too much because I'm not part of the culture necessarily. I mean,
Mm,
they want to speak to me for sure, but um, I'll tell them, I'll speak to them too. But I'm just saying you have an extra foot
I see what you're saying. I got it.
when you're Jewish. You have an extra foot in the game.
Okay. I guess so.
I guess I guess what I'm saying is my goal is to fight anti-Zionism because I think it harms Jews and I think it is irrational, unreasonable, and destructive. So I don't know how else to say it clearer than that. Yeah, so come see what I do.
Yeah, you do amazing work, and also people should follow you. You're also pretty active on Facebook as well, Kyle
I
B.
am.
Jones.
Yes.
Um, really, I'm very grateful to you for your work, for your voice, for your like clarity.
Thank
Um,
you.
and
Naya, I love what you do.
um,
You're killing it out there. Like
thank- next
stop we need to
symposium,
stop anti-Zionism.
yes, next symposium, you're definitely on our speaker list, so we definitely will have you on.
I'm all for it.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this very special, really powerful episode of Don't Know Much About. If you liked what you heard, like, subscribe, share wildly. Until next time.